share just a little bit of the love that I have for the city for all of you today. So I guess if I work at Melbourne University, I used to study there, and so every single day I'd arrive just behind us over here at Melbourne Central train station, and I got lost. Yeah, I got lost a lot. In fact, I was getting lost so frequently, I started purposefully going down alleyways and laneways trying to get lost in my own city. Nowadays, as I mentioned, I've been a tour guide for a long time now, I cannot get lost in my own city, and that is very simple. So, one of the big aims for today is I want to try and get you guys lost. Yeah, I know you've probably been told don't follow strange green men down dark alleyways, but that's planned today. I want you guys to experience just a little bit of that joy and excitement that I did, maybe 15 years ago when I first started exploring my city for the very first time. And the other thing that I would like to do today is this tour is called the Culture Capital Tour. Now, why on earth is it called that? That is because in the before times, before COVID 2018, 2019, when we wrote and designed this tour, Melbourne was voted as the second most livable city in the world, according to The Economist magazine. Number 2, right? That's pretty special, isn't it? The only problem is, we used to be number 1. Yeah, we used to be number 1 for 7 years in a row, record breaking. No one's ever done that. Does anyone know who beat us? No. Sydney, how dare you?
Yes, my Sydney.
Sydney wasn't even close. No, it was Vienna. I know Vienna, right? Vienna got number 1. Now Vienna, they beat us in a couple of categories. One of those is the weather.
No way. No way.
Really?
Okay, that's a little bit strange. I'll talk about the weather a little bit later on the tour. But I'll tell you what, there is another category that we did beat Vienna. And not just Vienna number 1, we beat number 1, number 3, number 4, and number 5. So best in the top 5 in the world. And that is the culture category. Now, Vienna is generally known as the culture capital of Europe, so that must mean that Melbourne is the culture capital of the world. Why are you laughing at me? Okay, well, that's a little bit hard to prove, but hopefully on this tour, that's my aim. How on earth did Melbourne beat all the other cities in culture? There must be something special about this city. So that is what this tour is all about. So getting lost and learning about culture. And the other thing I want to mention before we get moving is, has anyone done one of these style of walking tours, by the way? Yeah. Anyone done one? Quite a few of you, excellent. So for those of you who have never done this type of thing before, I've done them all over the world, London, Berlin, San Francisco, you name it. And the way they basically work is that you guys turn up, I show you around, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing time. And I hope that you leave us with what you thought the tour was worth in the form of a tip or gratuity. Now, essentially those tips go back to the bosses who live in Sydney to pay for things like insurance, taxes, those exciting things, and these beautiful Korean fashion statements that I get to wear around the city. And then another percentage of the tips goes to myself and the about 10 other tour guides that work for this company, so we can continue doing this as our part-time job. As I mentioned, I've been a tour guide for about 8 years now, so I love doing it, so I hope you have a bit of fun and learn a few things about Melbourne. So, we're going to get away from this area. This tour is not about big monuments and buildings, it's about tiny little alleyways and laneways. We're going to head across the road down Drury Lane. Let's explore.
Света, а у вас?
Ангелина.
Здорово. Вы прям одна приехали так далеко?
Да.
Ничего себе. Нет, здорово. А где еще были?
Япония, Южная Африка.
Да?
Да.
Ничего себе.
Стараюсь путешествовать. Я как раз сюда летела через Сингапур, тоже в Сингапур.
Ну, после Японии, наверное, это как деревня, да?
Ну, по-другому все, да.
Я записываю немножко как эфир прямой, поэтому лично лучше не говорить. Ну, такое. Хочу записать, потому что потом пересмотрю. Не всегда все улавливаю по-английски, хочу больше знать. Могу потом поделиться, может, пересмотрите тоже. А вы были еще утренние туры, бывают у них?
Я долго сплю.
Я сегодня долго спала, потому что я всю дорогу рулила вчера. 8 с лишним часов только ехать. Ну, мы останавливались, естественно, там. Ну,
Все равно, да.
это очень долго. 5 часов за рулем еще нормально, но 8 это уже в день как бы. Да, я пришла, я там вырубилась просто совсем. Да, интересный, красивый город. А потом я хочу что-нибудь пойти, как говорят, какой-то есть коко блэк. Там самый вкусный горячий шоколад.
О, это
Да, возле Майера, где там.
Я тоже люблю горячий шоколад.
Вот я кофе просто не пью,
И я.
а они здесь
Я
кофеманы.
зеленый чай пью, да, и могу горячий шоколад. А кофе, да, я не большой люблю.
Я еще пью чай без пакетиков, потому что пакетики, они вот, когда завариваются, оказываются вредные.
Поэтому спасибо за наводку.
Слушайте, мы, наверное, не зря встретились.
Да, вот бывает такое.
Да? На один тур попали. Да, нас за закоулочками ведут, интересно. Что будет делать, если потерял половину? Ой, там, смотрите, тоже такое.
Come around, guys, come around. There's a lot of people.
Nice.
Just so we don't block up the whole part here. So everyone, we're about to head down to Drury Lane. But before we head down there, I do want to talk about street art. Because I love street art here in Melbourne. I try and follow all the different street artists on Instagram to kind of know what they're doing around the city. And I want to show you that street art isn't just a spray can on the wall. It can be any type of outdoor installation or medium. And the very first street art we see is actually on the wall behind me. It's above that security camera over there, the mosaic of the Space Invader. Now, do I have any French people on my tour here today? No? If anyone's been to Paris before, you can see that stuff all over the place. A Parisian artist named Invader. Now, what Invader will do is he'll go to a city and he'll do a lot of research. So he'll try and kind of figure out what's going on, and then in the middle of the night, he'll try and invade the city and put up as many of those Space Invaders as possible. Here in Melbourne, he put up 25 in one night, and you can actually download his app and use the app to try and find all the Space Invaders. If you find them all, you get 500 points. I don't know what those points do, but it's a fun way to interact with art. I don't know anyone else that uses kind of video game mechanics to create art around the world. He's incredibly famous, by the way. He has one of his pieces literally in space. It's hanging on the wall of the International Space Station. Like, that's how famous he is. So it's pretty cool that he's come here to Melbourne. But we're going to head down to Drury Lane, have a look to the left, look to the right. There's lots of street art down here, and also you'll see some copycats, some non-originals of Invader's work.
В Сиднее тоже есть такие туры бесплатные. Я даже ходила на один, но недавно. Спустя 17 лет жизни в Австралии я узнала об этом.
Решили побыть туристом, да?
А на самом деле я просто иногда подрабатываю. Вот эти гиды, которые русские, русскоговорящие, они дают мне работу встречать туристов с аэропорта на машине, потому что у меня машина хорошая. Ну, встречать как вот private driver и везти их куда-нибудь там в гостиницу. Много мне не доверяют. Они пытаются тоже здесь, очень большая конкуренция. Да,
клиенты.
сами не хотят отдавать этих.
Конечно.
Да, потому что они зарабатывают ну, минимум там $600-700 в день, просто вот так вот водя туристов и рассказывая, причем двух. Вот два человека.
Тур, да?
Да, два человека берут. Да. О, смотрите, какое искусство. Обалдеть. Сколько всего. Вот он. Настенные.
Come on in, you won't be able to hear me all the way back there. I do have a loud voice, but it's not that loud. Okay. So everyone, this building over here is called the Legacy House. And the artwork over here is done by children, by families to say, thank you to Legacy House for supporting Australian military personnel and their families. Now, despite being 16,000 kilometres away from Versailles, Melbourne was not able to escape the effects of both World War I and World War II. During World War I, 60,000 Australian troops died on battlefields very far away from home. Then during World War II, 60% of all men aged between 18 and 29 volunteered for World War II. Out of that 60%, 60% of them died. So Melbourne, we were the capital city of Australia, at least for a short period of time before Canberra, our capital city, was built, and we were unable to escape the effects, the devastation, the trauma of both those wars. But I suppose if we're doing a tour on culture, we really need to ask ourselves, when did culture begin? When did we stop calling ourselves British and start calling ourselves Australian? And I think World War I and World War II is a good place to start. Because during World War I, we're asking ourselves, why did we do that? Why did we send so many of our young men to the opposite side of the world to fight in a war that we didn't understand over here? met during World War II, 250,000 American troops came into Australia. They were here to protect us. There were 50,000 American troops here in Melbourne. The only problem was there was no war here in Melbourne. So these American troops, they were promised adventure and excitement and war, and they came here to Melbourne. They described Melbourne as half the size of New York Cemetery and 3 times as boring. They really didn't like it here. We described the Americans as overworked, overpaid, and oversexed. Yeah, just make sure we don't get hit by that motorcycle. Just make it around here. So the reason we call them oversexed is because they stole all our women. Yeah. No, I'm serious. The American men were dressed better. The uniform was just nicer than the Australian Army uniform. They were paid better. They actually ate better as well. We were going through rationing at the time. So they had more money. They were able to afford better food. Plus, they were just more muscly than the Australian men in general. And after World War II, thousands of Australian women had gotten married to these American men and went back to America with their newlywed husbands. So they literally did steal all our women. So all these Australian men were going, who are these Americans? What's so special about them? Are we British? Are we American? Are we Australian? What makes us unique? What makes us different? And I think someone that really understood what it meant to be Australian is actually this gentleman over here. Take a few steps inside. So, this over here is a man named Sir John Monash. Now, Sir John Monash is a Melbourne engineer of German and Jewish descent, and he rose to the ranks to become the most famous military leader in Australian history. He led a combination of 200,000 Australian troops and 50,000 American troops in a combination of air and land combat that revolutionised the way that we fought battles here in Australia. But because of his background, both German and Jewish, the officers, the people in charge, they did not like him. They didn't want to spend any time with him whatsoever. So he spent all of his time with the soldiers, and the soldiers respected him immensely. He was one of the first people that I can really pinpoint that said, no, it doesn't matter where you're from, we're all Australian and we're all fighting under one flag. It is a little bit sad that war was kind of that thing that brought us together, but let's be honest, war does have that effect. But if I was to really pinpoint when we started embracing that Australian identity, I think this would be a place to start. We're going to make our way now across to the other side of the road over there, but I do want to show you a beautiful piece of artwork down this lane over here.
Как интересно.
Yeah, didn't have to pay a cent.
Nothing at all to do with tour guiding. Oh, yeah. My son is awesome.
not as fancy.
Такие крутые тачки ездят здесь вообще. Даже в Сиднее, ну, меньше. Ну, мне так кажется, здесь прям вообще прям встречается богаче. А больше миллионеров, я слышала, живет как раз в Мельбурне. Да, поэтому ну фиг его знает. У нас тоже есть очень там крутые люди, все такое. Но тачек вот прямо меньше по городу наблюдается. А еще мы как-то приехали сюда давно. Я еще беременная была, но я еще даже не знала, что я беременная. Это было... Ой, сколько же было? 13 лет назад. Да, и мы пытались снять гостиницу, и все номера были заняты, вообще все. Мы ходили по городу, мы гуглили, мы через Google звонили в гостиницы. Один человек нас возил по всем, по городу, искали мы гостиницы. В результате, почему мы узнали, что вообще такое произошло? Потому что был кинофестиваль тут какой-то огромный, и все гостиницы были заняты вообще. Мы пешком с тяжелыми сумками шлялись по городу вот до 2 часов ночи. В результате мы нашли какой-то отель, который стоил на тот момент 90 баксов, это было ну как, но он был с видом на противоположную лысую стену другого здания. Вот такой вид, прям вот рядом стена и все. Да, и кровати были прикручены, да, к полу. Я даже не могла обнять своего мужа, чтобы просто почувствовать себя в безопасности. Я и так 2 часа ходила по городу, голодная, истощенная, вообще просто. И когда я наконец проснулась утром, и мы вышли покушать, я сижу, ем и плачу. Он мне говорит, ты что плачешь? Я говорю, я жива. А у меня, знаешь, гормоны, я беременная, я не знала. И я реву просто вот так, чтобы вообще поели с утра после гостиницы, которую случайно еще нашли. А если бы не нашли, где бы мы ночевали на улице вообще, в подворотне. Да, я не знала, что беременна, потому что там было буквально там недельки 2, может.
Okay. So everyone, we have made our way down Caledonian Lane, and down this lane I would like to talk about live music. Okay, that's a little bit strange, isn't it? The reason I want to talk about live music is because in 2018-2019, when the Roten Fund, Melbourne was actually voted the live music capital of the world. How do we get that title? That is because Melbourne has more live music venues per person than any other city in the world. So that's one live music venue for every 10,000 people. So that's twice as good as New York and 3 times better than London. And these live music venues can be anything from giant sold-out arena spectaculars. I mean, a couple of years ago, last year, Taylor Swift came here to Melbourne. We had 3 98,000-seat shows in a row here in Melbourne. So we have some really big stadiums, or maybe a more intimate location for live music, like a laneway. Now, Melburnians love our laneways, we also love our live music, so when you combine the two together, you get one of the most Melbourneian things, a laneway music festival. Sorry. And Caledonian Lane is home to the very first one. It was called St. Jerome's Laneway Festival. Now, St. Jerome started because there used to be a bar down the end there, and that bar had a bit of a courtyard, and they played a bit of live music. And one day that live music was so popular, people were spilling out of the courtyard onto this back laneway. So the owner of the bar thought, you know what, maybe I can turn this into something special. He talked to all the restaurant owners up and down the street and said, don't serve food out the main road, serve the food out these back doors. And without even realising it, he accidentally started his own festival. So many people turned up the next year, they had a makeshift stage down the end, and people were piling out of Caledonian Lane all the way to Drury Lane, where we were on the other side of the road. Now St. Jerome's Laneway Festival, or just better known as Laneway Festival, is one of the biggest festivals in Australia. It has elected every single major city around the country, and one in New Zealand as well. Right? I really think that this laneway is a great example of the phrase that everything has beauty, but not everyone can see it. Because it's one bar and trying to put this dark, silly laneway and say, I can turn it into something special. And now we own one of the biggest music enterprises in all of Australia. So I think Laneway Festival is almost over. It's been going throughout the entirety of February, so it might be up to its last weekend very soon. So, but yeah, all the festivals come out when the sun's out, but now everyone's back at work, so. Okay, we're going to head down this direction, we'll turn right when we get to here.
Наверное, наверное, надо ближе идти к нему, а то совсем не слышно. И так трудно понять. Кто-то выезжает. Ой, сейчас он здесь поедет, наверное. Надо уйти с дороги как-то еще.
Thanks to her music, but
Вот Дэвид Джонс. Кока.
ja, wirklich auch die ganze Zeit so. Deswegen war ich jetzt gerade nicht so, haben wir uns so viel rausverkostet.
Viena.
5:30 or 6.
¿Cómo no? Ah, yo debería decir.
Я еще радио из Латвии слушаю.
Wheelchair accessibility. There we go. Yep, come around the green on this side. Yes, so yeah, where would we for it? We just don't want to block off the whole pathway for everyone. So the plan is we're going to head down this laneway over here, Postal Lane. And down this laneway, it allows me to talk about my favourite fact about Melbourne. And that is that 60% of Melburnians are either not born in Australia, or their parents aren't born in Australia. Which means everyone here is first generation, including myself. My dad's side of the family's from Hungary, Budapest. My mum's side of the family's from Poland, so I'm all European, right? So everyone here is first generation. And that just means that as you walk around the streets of Melbourne, it's an Italian restaurant next to a Thai restaurant, next to a Mexican restaurant, next to a Japanese restaurant, like one after the other after the other. And this laneway is no different. We've got a Thai restaurant at the front over here, then it goes to a Japanese restaurant, then an Italian one down the end. So that's incredibly normal here in Melbourne, that multiculturalism of this city. But this laneway, it never used to be filled with restaurants. It used to be filled with postal vehicles. Because the building behind me is the GPO, or the General Post Office. Back in the 1840s, if you wanted to send a letter home to your family, you had to go down to the docks, give a letter to a sailor, and hope that it made its way all the way to Europe. But by the 1850s, they built this beautiful sandstone building, and they used it to deliver letters. And by the 1930s, this laneway was used for cars to pick up letters and deliver them to Melburnians. I will talk a little bit later on the tour. I'm kind of building up to that moment. Why on earth our laneways are filled with bars and restaurants and cafes and street art. But for the time being, I'll just have a little bit of a walk through. And make sure you have a look on the left and the right hand side. You'll see all the old fashioned signs that say, beware of motor vehicles, to remind you what the laneway used to be. That's how it works. So, sorry, what is what?
Sound like anything.
There's
kangaroos.
yeah, there's no such thing.
There's
No such thing, yeah.
Кока-Блэк должен быть где-то вот недалеко от всего этого.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, too many great stuff.
We have like a few cakes or biscuits or things like that, or cookies. You know, like we like Tim Tams. So Tim Tams is a chocolate biscuit or Vegemite.
Видимо, это пробовала. Ты пробовала? Господи, мне не понравилось. Кому как, кому-то понравится, кому-то нет. Оно соленое, понимаешь? Да.
A bakery or something. But yeah, most of these places are most of these are just snacks. They're not a cuisine. So you're right.
В Риге +2, +6. Я на связи. У меня друг, которого была влюблена, наверное, с 18 лет, работает на радио. Да. И мы общаемся. Еще как. Я в эфире даже бываю время от времени, потому что там у них есть интерактивчики. Ну, вообще есть просто. Вот Майер где-то. Королевская. Это большой из магазинов, да. Да, там можно закупаться. Как кто? Я не знаю, что такое Macy's.
When we do cross the road, I need to make sure that everyone does something very important for me. I need to make sure that no one gets hit by a tram. Very, very important. Now, I know this might be a bit confusing. You don't have trams back in your home city. Now, the way you avoid being hit by trams is you've got to use your imagination, right? Trams weigh as much as 30 rhinoceroses. So I want you to imagine 30 rhinos on skateboards coming at you down the street. Yeah, if you have that image in your head, you'll always be able to avoid being hit by a tram. Works every time. Let's cross the road.
Okay.
Yeah, no one sticks to any rules. Sure. So everyone, we're not heading down the Royal Arcade. If you see this beautiful arcade over here, if you'd like to go down there, we do go down there on the Melbourne Sights Tour, which is the tour that we do every morning at 10:30 a.m. Because this tour is not about beautiful, fancy arcades, it's about dodgy laneways. So we're going to head around the corner to go down a dangerous laneway.
В 10:30, говорит. Проснешься? Переулочки всякие. завтра пригласили здесь в русском клубе. Да. Причем на какое-то мастерство, театральное мастерство или что-то такое, или актерское мастерство бесплатно.
Урок?
Да, урок, и там будет куча русских ребят всяких разных. Да. Ну, насчет русских не знаю, но русскоговорящих, наверное. Ну, сейчас все так сложно. Мы стараемся политику не обсуждать, чтобы ничего не было такого, потому что у людей разные мнения. Ну, я, по крайней мере, стараюсь не лезть в политику. У меня есть знакомые и с Украины, и из России, я из Латвии, как бы я пытаюсь как бы держать нейтралитет, но у меня плохо получается, потому что есть давление с одной из сторон. Одной. Причем вторая так понимает, в случае чего. Здесь много на улицах курят, у нас в Сиднее не принято, за это очень штрафуют. Да. В общественных местах вообще нельзя. Я смотрю, здесь сегодня дамочка зашла с собакой просто в трамвай. У нас вообще такого нет. В общественном транспорте собачка должна быть либо в специальной колясочке, либо у тебя в рюкзачке в каком-нибудь, а не так, что ты прям... Ну да, да. Я не знаю, здесь это легально или нет, вот так с собаками заходить. Интересно очень. Но зато во время ковида здесь было больше рестрикшенов, запретов всяких. Ну, в Мельбурне по людям, протестующим, стреляли пулями резиновыми. По детям просто писец. Ну. А в Сиднее такого не было. Здесь очень жестко. Здесь могли подходить и там, орать на тебя, что ты не в маске. В Сиднее более так спокойно все было.
Yes. Yes, I never used the speakers before. I just tell people to stand real close. Yes, come on down, everyone, come on down. This used to be a bar.
Ботинки.
I'm not even joking, it ripped off the wall. It used to be the smallest bar in Melbourne. It was called Bar Americano, 12 people. It was very cool. And then they ripped it up. Now I think it's a fancy camera store or something on the other side. But, okay, so everyone, welcome to Presgrave Place. Now I love Presgrave Place because this laneway in the 1920s used to be used for sly grog. Yes, sly grog is illegal alcohol. Yeah, so so basically in the 1920s we had a bit of a prohibition, and it was illegal to sell alcohol after 6 p.m. No nighttime drinking. So what you had to do is you'd come down a laneway like this into a back little door and buy some sly grog or illegal alcohol. So this laneway was not a very safe place to be. But nowadays, Melbourne is voted the 10th safest city in the world according to The Economist magazine. So these laneways, they aren't actually that dangerous. So why is Melbourne so safe? Well, I'll get back to that in just a second. Because first, I want to talk about street art. I love street art here in Melbourne. We have about 200 laneways here in the centre of the city, and 20 of them are designated as legal street art laneways. So you can come down here and do whatever you want. You will not get in trouble. But it wasn't always like that. Go back to 2003, Disney World in America opened a replica of a Melbourne street art laneway. So you could see what Melbourne looked like in Disney World. I know, it was a little bit strange, but it was a fun tourism campaign, why not, a bit fun. But then, when the city council found out about it, they said, "How dare you represent Melbourne using street art?" They got the laneway shut down. But then 1 month later, Lonely Planet announced Melbourne street art laneways as the #1 cultural attraction in all of Australia. Right, so the grumpy old politicians hated it, but everyone else loved it. Now, there is a whole bunch of different styles of street art. One of them is tagging. Tagging is where you just write your name on a wall. If someone does a tag, you are welcome to do a tag over the top of it. If someone does a beautiful piece of artwork, you are not allowed to go over the top unless you think you can do better. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange rule, right? It means if you think you're the best artist in the world, you can do whatever you want. But there is one more rule that's more important than all the other rules put together. And that is that street art, it's for the people. It's not for the government. Street art here in Melbourne started during the Afghanistan war, probably earlier during the Vietnam War. It was a way that people could write anti-war messages. We hate the war, stop the war. You know, you'd write it on big letters on a wall, and then the next day the government would come along and paint over the top of it. And then what would the street artists do? They'd come back the next night and they'd write on the wall, "We hate the war, stop the war." It was the voice of the people. So, one great example of this is Banksy, of course, the most famous street artist in the world from Bristol, England. Came here to Melbourne in 2003, did artwork all over the place. 5 years later, in 2008, the government started to realise his artwork was worth just a little bit of money, so they decided to protect one of his pieces. They found a stencil. It was a stencil of a deep-sea diver. You know the ones with the old-fashioned big metal helmets? They covered over the top of the artwork with a perspex piece of glass. Within 1 month, someone grabbed a bucket of silver paint, poured it in between the wall and the glass, completely ruining Banksy's artwork, and wrote over the top, "Banksy was here." You don't mess with the street art code. That artwork had been left untouched for 5 years by all the other artists until the government decided to make money out of it. Yeah, you see how that works? Street art is for the people, it's not for the government. Now these rules pretty much apply everywhere in Melbourne, including this laneway. The street artists very much, they take care of themselves. Okay, back to that original question. 10th safest city in the world. Why are we so safe? You're looking at it. Street art. Okay, this is a little bit of a strange one, but let me try and explain. This is something that I like to call agglomeration theory. Now, I think I'm bastardizing the word a little bit, but agglomeration theory means if you grab a laneway like this and you fill it with bars, restaurants, cafes, and street art, then people come to the laneways. And if people come to the laneways, you can no longer commit crimes down the laneways. I mean, if someone was committing a crime over there, what would you do? Pull out your phone, start filming them, put them on TikTok. There's no privacy anymore. So, street art and alcohol makes Melbourne safer? Maybe? Okay, it's not the actual street art and alcohol that makes Melbourne safer, it's you guys that like street art and alcohol and come to these laneways and make these laneways a safer place to be. I mean, you literally can't commit crimes when there are just so many locals just wandering around all these laneways. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to head out of this dodgy laneway and we're going to go to a fancy building just over there.
Здесь хоть было тихо, не так шумно. Вообще в Сиднее они используют микрофоны. Интересно, куда мы попали? Какие-то подворотни все время вообще. Я думаю, боже, куда нас ведут? Это ловушка. Мусорные подворотни. Это тоже достопримечательно. Ну, народ же все заходит. Хоть приличная подворотня попалась. Смотри, пол как будто мокрый.
It's called the Manchester Unity. Yes, come around, plenty of room. Are you live streaming?
Why not?
Okay, sure. I'm live. Someone told me that Australians like to lean on things, so I don't know. So I'm embracing that stereotype, I suppose. But welcome everyone here to the Manchester Unity building. You can see in very shiny gold letters up the top there. It was built in 1932 by the Independent Order of Oddfellows. The Oddfellows were kind of like an insurance agency before insurance agencies existed. The only problem is, 1932, it was the year of the Great Depression. People lost their jobs, they lost their money, they were poor, they were miserable. But the Oddfellows turned around and said, no, we're undepressed by the Great Depression. Very catchy phrase, right? They got workers around the block, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. They were constructing 24/7. They managed to construct this entire building in just 6 months. 3 months of planning, 3 months of building. They built one floor per week. Yeah. But the most impressive part of the entire building, it's not the Art Deco Chicago-style interior, it's not the mosaic floor, it's not even the bronze elevators. The most impressive part of the entire building is this. The very first escalator ever installed in Melbourne.
Wow.
Yeah, people were literally lining up around the block just to get a ride on this thing. Yeah, we didn't have mobile phones back then. This is about the most exciting thing you could do. I have a theory though. Do you see how up over there where the clock is? It's kind of like an empty space up there. I feel like there was meant to be a second escalator going down, but they ran out of space. Yeah, or they ran out of money, I assume. Yeah. It's, so yes, if you do go up there, you're stuck forever. That's kind of, there's only one way up. And there is a dentist up there, so I already went to the dentist last week, so I'm not going to go there today. So what we're going to do, head around the corner, go to the front, and see how beautiful, how amazing this building is to build in just 6 months. Let's go have a look.
Unbelievable.
A couple, maybe some mid-level watch brands.
Я ему прям в наглую так и говорю, а что нет, просто не ждешь? Ну, а может наоборот он это. Да. У меня была на прошлой экскурсии с ребенком была. Он такой, ну, знаешь, ему скучно было. Он то сядет где-нибудь, то поедет на самокате вокруг. Потом такой, мам, я нашел твой кайф. Ну, всем объезжал.
It's been like 8 years of building, yeah, but they've had to build a tunnel underneath the centre of the city, so it's a lot of work. So I forgive them. It's okay.
Я вот в Беларуси не была ни разу. А я не могу. Я застряла в этом Сиднее уже на 17 лет. Я здесь вообще как в тюрьме красивая. Нет, понимаешь, мы подаем все время, чтобы получить постоянное жительство. Уже 17 лет. И нам постоянно отказывают, да. У нас ребенок здесь родился. Он гражданином стал, когда ему стало 10 лет только. То есть автоматически не дают гражданство. И вот мы сейчас попросили опять министра иммиграции пересмотреть наше дело. Уже полтора года уже ничего не отвечают. Что дальше не знаю. связь. У тебя есть какие-то соцсети?
Ну, в основном, так, Инстаграм, чуть-чуть для себя, для семьи. А больше ничего я не веду. Блогер.
Слушай, ну я тоже не особо так, знаешь. У меня просто мама, когда родился ребенок, требовала все время фотки, пришли это. Я стала YouTube-канал вести. И если я забывала выложить видео, она мне звонила и спрашивала, что случилось? Я говорю, окей, сейчас что-нибудь выложу. Причем у меня такое, знаешь, что вижу, о том пою. Да, то есть я не какой-то там, знаешь, ведущий, знаешь, канала, мне не нужно было это.
There we are, little dog. That's Larry Latrobe number 2, by the way. If anyone knows what number 1 is, we really appreciate it. We think number 1 got stolen by some college students at Melbourne University, like a college prank. So I assume that Larry Latrobe number 1 is in someone's attic in a college room, something of that direction. But Larry Latrobe number 2 is being bolted to the ground with 30 centimetre long bolts. So hopefully no one's stealing that one. Sorry? It was like
Okay, we'll show you a bit city. Right.
But we are standing here in front of beautiful Melbourne town hall, and I know I said this towards me about big monuments and buildings, but I can't believe that I'm talking about it. And one of the reasons I love this place is because a lot of famous things happen in this location. Probably one of my favourites is that balcony at the top there was the very first ever public appearance of the Beatles when they came into Melbourne. So I want you to imagine thousands of 16-year-old girls locking off the entire road there because they're meant to walk out and talk about it. They didn't play the music, they just sit there and wait. They felt a bit guilty, they only did one show in Melbourne, so sold out.
Простите, какой вам вид показать? Какой милашки? Вы о чем?
And that is our love of protesting. Yes, we love to protest here in Melbourne. We are the biggest protesting city here in Australia. And one of the biggest protests that has ever happened here in Melbourne was in 1923, the Great Police Riots. Now, in 1923, the police here in Melbourne were some of the most underpaid workers in the country. Their pensions had just been cut, and a lot of police officers wondering how on earth they were going to be able to afford to feed their families when they retired. Also, the government was making police officers spy on other police officers like undercover agents. Conditions were horrible. So, 900 police officers went on strike. Now, what's the problem when 900 police officers go on strike? I mean, yeah, there are no police officers, that's the main problem. So the people of Melbourne, we love a good protest, we thought we'd go out and support them. Melburnians went up and down Swanford Street, they started breaking all the windows and stealing everything. I don't know how that helps, but it was absolute chaos. Melburnians were blocking off the traffic on the corner of Swanford Street and Burke Street. They even knocked over a tram in the middle of that Collins Street intersection and set the tram on fire. The remaining police officers had to run inside the Melbourne Town Hall and barricade themselves in. And it wasn't until Sir John Monash, our famous German general, managed to enlist 5,000 emergency constables, or basically all these old army buddies from World War I, to get the situation under control. I wish I had 5,000 best friends that could come into the city anytime I wanted, but he was a special type of guy. Now, of course, the Melburnians finally went home, and only after the protest did the government realise that the police were horribly underpaid, and they were able to win everything they fought for. It was a huge win for the people of Melbourne. The only problem was that most police officers never got a job ever again. They fought so hard for what they believed in, they sacrificed their future careers as a result. And that can happen here in Melbourne. We protest pretty hard. And people always ask me, they say, Lenny, second most livable city in the world? I mean, what's there to protest about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're not number 1, we could go a bit higher, but I think the fact that we're allowed to protest and the police don't shut us down, the government doesn't silence us, freedom of speech. And I think that is an incredibly important part about being a livable city. Now, I may not agree with all the protests I see here in Melbourne. I probably agree with about 50% of the protests that I see, but I very much agree with their right to protest here in Melbourne. I think that's an incredibly important part about being a Melburnian. Every Melburnian has to try to protest once or twice in their life, I think. Okay, we're going to head around the corner to a very strange looking building over there.
Thank you.
Не, ну может потому они и стреляли пулями, они бы же не сильно протестовали и буянили. В Сиднее они не били ни витрины, ничего такого.
Jaywalking and I'm in trouble. I didn't pay
Наверное.
for it, it was not my choice.
Серьезно.
Yes, around this way. Okay. Whew, okay. So we are standing in front of Council House 2. We were just at the Melbourne Town Hall, where a lot of people who work for the City Council of Melbourne, they work in that building. But before, Council House 1 was an old building. It was falling apart. They needed to construct a new building for the City Council workers. And so in 2004, they stood in front of Melburnians and they said, we are going to construct the only 6-star energy efficient building in all of Australia. It will have a summer mode, it will have a winter mode. We are going to take control of Melbourne's weather. A bit of drilling in the background. But basically, as soon as they said that, we just laughed at them. Take control of Melbourne's weather. You can't take control of Melbourne's weather. Melbourne has one of the most unpredictable weather patterns in the world. I know everyone says that about their city, I know. Yeah, even yesterday. Was yesterday the day where it just bucketed down rain for no reason out of nowhere?
Just at the end of our tour.
And that wasn't, the weather forecast didn't say rain either. It was insane. Yeah, so completely getting distracted. But yes, the weather is very strange if you were here yesterday, or any day here in Melbourne. The reason is because we have desert above us and Antarctica below us. We get these hot winds and the cold winds, and the weather can change really, really rapidly. There were some days during the summer where it went up 10 degrees, then down 10 degrees within like quick little hour periods, right? And I mean, okay, hey, they claim they save $2 million every single year, not just on carbon emissions and energy efficiency, but also the happiness of their employees. I mean, I don't know how you equate happiness with a monetary value, but apparently that some accountant has done those maths there somewhere. But I'm not too sure about this building. They claim they succeeded, but okay, for example, do you see up the top there those yellow turbines? Right? They're meant to spin. They're meant to cycle the air through the building from top to bottom, very efficient system. Does anyone notice anything odd about them? Yeah, I haven't seen them spin in years. Okay. Technology in this building. Most of it doesn't work. I've talked to the people who work in this building, they say it's too hot during the summer, it's too cold during the winter. They did not take control of Melbourne's weather. But in 2004, the City Council of Melbourne, they wanted to encourage future builders, designers, architects, and planners to design environmentally friendly buildings. And they said, how can we encourage everyone else to do it unless we do it ourselves first? So this is their strange and wacky attempt at trying to inspire Melburnians. I mean, if you go all the way back to the 1840s, Melbourne's original Latin motto is "Vires acquirit juvenem," which means we get stronger as we go. And I think it's important to tell stories about the great police riots, about how we always fight for the here and now, but how we very much fight also for the future. Melbourne's doing pretty well with reducing carbon emissions. In fact, every city, every state in Australia is doing very well at reducing carbon emissions and increasing renewable energy, except for Western Australia. Yeah, they're the ones digging up all the coal and all this stuff underground, so they're going up. But if we just forget about half of Australia, the rest of us are doing really well. So, okay, so we're going to head around the corner to, we're going to head, I have to apologise, this is the steepest hill in all of Melbourne. Yeah, this is all we have. Yeah, but we're going to head around the corner to the Russell Place, one of the oldest laneways in all of Melbourne. Let's go.
А до скольки экскурсия, не знаешь? Парковочка, кстати, какие цены на парковочке, надо посмотреть. Потом сделаю скриншотик. О, что это за аппарат едущий? Магазинчик. Там роллер.
Sorry, mate. There we are. Jump up on the footpath over here, just sort of off the road. Here we go. Plenty of room, plenty of room. Yeah, come on up this way. Okay. So, everyone, welcome to Russell Place. And this is one of the what I mean by that is that there used to be boarding houses here. People used to live down the street, which is a bit strange. People didn't usually live in the centre of the city. This was in the 1840s, but by the 1890s, the residents of the street were complaining they wanted lights to be installed in the street. Yeah, that's because this laneway was being used as a public urinal. Yeah, men were peeing at the top of the street and seeing how far down they could. Yeah, common pastime of men. But nowadays, I mean, laneway is amazing. We've got places like the Black Kite Commune. I was there a couple of weeks ago. It's a new bar that opened up last year. We've got Bar Ampere, really cool like street art themed bar. Also, if you go to the back of Bar Ampere, like behind the toilets, there's a secret bar called the Swamp, which sells moonshine. Really, really cool. Also, that place stays open until 3 a.m. and serves food till 3 a.m., which is excellent. Behind that is Gin Palace. If If you love gin, we have about 450 craft gin distilleries here in Australia. That is too many distilleries here in Australia, and they sell a lot of gin there. A little bit dangerous. Last time I went there, I didn't wake up for my tour the next morning, so just behind that is Maramino, a new Italian restaurant. Behind that is Bijou, cute little wine bar if you want to meet all of our politicians. Great place to go. And you know, Giant Spring and Children by artists like Baby Gorilla. So, how on earth did we go from a laneway filled with public urination to now a laneway filled with bars, restaurants, and street art? Well, it actually happened really, really recently. In the mid-1990s, there was a Danish architect named Jan Gehl. Now, Jan Gehl, he was an urban planning architect, and he did a bit of a survey. He asked everyone here in Melbourne, what do you do in the centre of the city? And the result of the survey was that Melbourne was like a donut. Yeah, very interesting around the outside, and completely empty in the middle. Okay, it was a bit of an insult, but it was true. No one did anything. You'd come to work, and then you'd leave. There was nothing here to do. Now, this survey was done at a particularly important time for a couple of reasons. One, in the mid-1990s, Melbourne was going through a recession, so rent prices were quite low. And secondly, Crown Casino, the biggest casino in Australia, was actually being built on the banks of the river. But what does the casino all the way down there through the beautiful alleyways and laneways? Well, the casino had a lot of bars. Lots of alcohol on the bottom floor and then a bar on every level. The only problem was that the liquor license laws here in Australia were so old. They said if there was a single problem in any one of the bars, the entire venue had to be shut down from top to bottom. That's one liquor license for an entire casino. Now that's a problem for a casino with a lot of money, so they went to the Premier of Victoria. The Premier is like our governor, the person in charge here in Melbourne. His name is Jeff Kennett. And they said, listen, Jeffy boy, we have a bit of a problem. If you don't solve our problem, we're taking our money away. And Jeff said, no, I like money. As all good politicians do. He introduced something called a small bar license. Now, the small bar license allowed Crown Casino to have an individual license for each one of their bars, and it removed two laws that have been around in Australia for 160 years. Those two laws said, if you want to set up a bar, you need two things. One, you need a kitchen. You have to serve food with your alcohol. And secondly, you need beds. A place for people to sleep for the night. That is right, for 160 years in Australia, the only places that could legally serve alcohol were hotels. Have you ever noticed that in Australia? Young Jackson Hotel, Duke of Wellington Hotel, all the old-fashioned pubs and hotels, they literally had to be hotels. So this was a perfect storm. Melbourne was going through a recession. Rent prices were quite low. The government was actively encouraging people to start up small businesses. You could start up a really cheap bar. You didn't need to install a kitchen. You didn't need to install beds. Melbourne went in 1998. We had 571 places that could serve alcohol. So 571. 20 years later, in 2018, we had 14,400 places that could serve alcohol. You do the maths on that, that is 2 new liquor licenses every single day for 20 years straight. That is a lot of alcohol. We also went from having approximately 200 people living here in the centre of the city to now we have 54,000 people who are living in a small little rectangular grid. Melbourne is literally unrecognisable from what it used to be before. You know, I asked my parents, would they ever come down a laneway like this when they were my age? No, this is where you got stabbed. Now these are the coolest laneways here in Melbourne, filled with bars, restaurants, and giant screaming children. Much better. I know, it's a bit ridiculous to describe. As I said, I've been running around the city for the last 15 years, so for me, it's really, really normal for the laneways to be safe, for the laneways to be filled with street art, to be filled with bars and entertainment, but this is a brand new thing for this generation, so I highly encourage you to go down as many dodgy and dangerous-looking laneways as possible. It's a really cool new thing here. Okay, we're going to avoid this car over here that's in. We're going to walk direction. I would like to talk about Melbourne's #1 religion, coffee.
Да. Не можешь подержать чуть? Хочу найти кое-что в сумке. Неважно, куда ты направляешь. Там народ, кто заходит, не важно. Это главное, что у меня запись будет. Спасибо. Нужно зарядить, наверное. Да потому что, когда ведешь эти стримы, очень быстро садится. И не один. Какое интересное старое здание все. А еще на закате можно посмотреть пингвинчиков.
На Филипп Айленд, да?
Зачем ехать на Айленд? Здесь в городе можно. Да, и тебе не надо никуда ехать, не платить за это тоже не надо. Я знаю места, я просто... Да, все, мы все найдем.
Yeah, come on in, guys, come on in. I know, there's no real shade in this part, unfortunately. Yeah, can't find shade everywhere. But, everyone, I have talked a lot about alcohol, but that's probably a me problem. I should probably talk about our most drunk beverage, which is coffee. It actually goes coffee, wine, then beer here in Melbourne, so we drink more coffee than anything else, and a lot of wine. We love our wine here in Melbourne as well. But the two are actually closely connected. Has anyone heard of it? Do you want to make sure we're off the road over here? There is cars coming down this way. Amazing. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, see how you go. But the two are closely connected. Has anyone heard of the temperance movement? The temperance movement is this loose group of Christian organizations, and their aim is to ban alcohol. They succeeded in America. Well, the 1920s prohibition was a big push by the temperance movement, and they tried to do the exact same thing here. The temperance movement's originally from England. It was in England before Australia was colonised. It was in Sydney before Melbourne was colonised, and they tried to ban alcohol here in Australia. The only problem was that alcohol here in Melbourne, it wasn't about the flavour of the drink. In America, you had the fancy cocktails and the delicious drinks, but we didn't have cocktails yet here in Melbourne. So we had wine, and the wine was all right, and we had beer, and the beer was horrible. The beer we called swipes, because you had to swipe it down to avoid the taste. Yeah, it was flavoured with like tobacco and other horrible things like that back then. So when they tried to ban alcohol for us was about sitting and socialising with friends or family, not about the flavour of the drink. So they tried, and they succeeded in a lot of ways. For example, between 1910 to 1920, they closed down 1,500 of the 4,900 alcoholic venues. So almost a quarter of all bars just absolutely shut down. But in 1916, they passed their biggest law yet. They got alcohol banned after 6 p.m. I mentioned it earlier, right? It was the 6 o'clock swill. The main aim was that they wanted to stop people from, well, they wanted to stop men from getting drunk and then going home to their families. They wanted to reduce domestic violence. The only problem was that most men finished work at 5 p.m. Right, they went to the local pub, drunk as much as they humanly possibly could, as quickly as they could in a single hour, and they went home to their families, even more drunk than they were before. So it didn't really solve any problems, it kind of made things worse. But without a place to sit and socialise over a drink, we needed a new caffeinated beverage. And that is where coffee started appearing all over the places. I mentioned that hotels were the only places that were legally allowed to serve alcohol. Well, 50 hotels here in Melbourne burned their liquor licenses, they set them on fire, and said, we're only serving coffees. They called themselves coffee palaces, which is just a fancy name for a big building that serves coffee, I suppose. But originally, I mean, unfortunately, we only really drank British instant coffee. But after World War II, the Italians, the Greeks, the Turkish, they came into Melbourne, and they brought their coffee espresso machines, and we never looked back. But even before World War II, we had sent a letter to Europe. We wanted a professional coffee roaster to come here to Melbourne and teach us how to roast coffee. And Mr. Quist, just behind me over here, was the very first one to arrive. He came here in 1938 from Copenhagen, and he taught us how to roast coffee. Yeah, that's the original store. When he got a little bit old, he handed down his store to his apprentice. When that apprentice got a bit too old, he also wanted to hand his store down to his apprentice. He also wanted to hand his store down to his daughter, you know, keep the business within the family. I mean, so the daughter married the apprentice, and I mean, everyone was happy, I guess, one generation after the other after the other. So yes, if you do want great coffee, Mr. Quist is a great place to go. They also sell beans there as well. If you do want any suggestions about cafes, please come to the front and ask me. I know a lot of really good cafes here. Okay, we're going to head around the corner. I want to change topics just a little bit. I would like to talk about one of Melbourne's most famous millionaires. Let's go have a look.
What's a nice slide rock in Melbourne?
Hello everyone, thank you for support. We just joining beautiful excursion guided tour in Melbourne. Ну, кто-то там что-то пишет, просто спрашивает. Я не совсем вижу, что они пишут, что они там спрашивают, потому что я просто сама пытаюсь понять, что происходит. Ну, какие. Как у вас зима сейчас в Беларуси? Hi people, this is Melbourne, beautiful city. Most safe city in the world, how you say? Такие новые здания, старые.
We can go to Louis Vuitton. Yeah, we can. Sometimes I just like to go to the French luxury brands just to see if the price is changing according to where we are. So this is still Collins Street, and this is where all the that's crazy. Like all my yeah, just one street. Yeah, it's crazy. That's what I told my boss. Like I said, did I really move? Because I just that's right, like Mont Blanc, all of my streets.
Sure, just make sure we're off the road. What is this in town?
The accent.
Кстати, Ангелина, хочешь поучаствовать в радиоинтерактивчике?
Что нужно делать?
Достать телефон, найти WhatsApp и отправить сообщение голосовое.
А что говорить надо?
Был ли у тебя какой-то случай, когда какие-то из животных помешали твоим планам?
Нет,
Не было? Такого не было?
такого не было.
А у меня было, у меня прямой эфир сама.
Что было? Что интересно?
У меня, да, было интересно. У меня было... Строители, значит, они крышу ремонтировали. Ой, кто тут у меня? И решили там когда меняли крышу, увидели гнездо голубиное. Они взяли этого птенца оттуда, приперли мне, сказали, родители бросили, потому что они испугались. И птенца мне пришлось выкармливать вручную. Это было перед Новым годом, это сбило все мои планы, потому что я должна была все время кормить этого голодного птенца. И не могла особо уйти никуда.
Доброе дело.
Да, именно так.
So, here we are down George's Parade, and there's nothing interesting down here. Yeah, sorry. 200 laneway from Melbourne. Not all of them can be exciting. I mean, but honestly, I do like coming here. This bar's called Backspace. Not open on a Monday, but it is a very good bar here in Houston. In fact, the owner of the bar literally just walked past us as we were walking down, so he's probably in the store while he was checking things out. But the reason I wanted to come down here is I wanted to talk about the main road over there, Collins Street. Did anyone notice anything different about this east end of Collins Street compared to the rest of Melbourne? Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel, Tiffany's. Yes, we call this area of town the Paris end of Melbourne, not just because of the European trees and the European architecture, but because of the high-end shopping. And this millionaire that I would like to talk about made her millions selling on the east end of Collins Street. Her name was Helena Rubinstein. Now, Helena Rubinstein was of Polish Jewish descent. She actually escaped a marriage in 1893, came down here to Melbourne. Must have been a really bad marriage. She literally went to the opposite side of the planet. But she had an uncle that lived here in Melbourne, so I guess that made a little bit of sense. And she was described by the Victorian ladies as haughty and difficult. Yeah, they really didn't like her. But they were obsessed with her perfect skin. They said, how do you have such amazing skin? And she said, well, I make my own cream. Which apparently making your own cream was a common thing in Europe at the time, but definitely not here in Melbourne. And these Victorian ladies said, we need some of that cream. So she sent a letter home to her mum, and her mum talked to her Hungarian chemist friend, inspired by got some ingredients sent over, right? And inspired by the harsh Australian sun and the natural ingredients you can find around the area, she made her own cream. Now, she borrowed money from her uncle, because, women weren't allowed to borrow money from the banks in the 1800s. I mean, all the 1900s either, women weren't allowed to borrow money from the banks for a very, very long time, but I'm getting distracted with a whole other story. And she set up a store down on Elizabeth Street where her cream sold so well, she was able to sell that store and set up down here with all the other millionaires, where she became the first ever self-made female millionaire in the world. She was able to go to Europe, go back to university and study the science of the cosmetic industry, and found herself in America where she was labeled by the New York Times as the most brilliant female entrepreneur of our times. She was able to sell her business in 1928 to the Lehman Brothers for $80 million. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a lot of money. We're going to have to get off the road for this car over here. So jump on in here. Yes, I mean, $80 million is a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money back in 1928. Get down the road as well. Not, it's a bit narrow here. The only problem was, 4 years later, 1932, was the Great Depression. With mismanagement of her company, her stock prices went from $60 per stock down to $3 per stock. So what did she do? She bought back her company and built it up to an even bigger empire than it was before. Yeah, Helena Rubinstein was an amazing individual. If you ever want to know why you don't just need one cream for your face, but you need 5 or 6 or 7, that's entirely her fault, by the way. That's, yeah, she definitely started that. She actually has a very famous quote. There's no such thing as ugly women, just lazy ones. Okay, don't shoot the messenger, I didn't say that, I promise, that's all her. But it's another story that I love because, once again, she was born in another country. She was only here in Melbourne for a little bit. She went back to Europe, she went to America. But we're very proud to call her Melburnian because she made her millions selling to gullible Melburnians. Okay, we're going to head down the road to the very final laneway of the tour, ACDC Lane. Let's rock.
Oh, there.
If live stream will finish, you can come back after 5-10 minutes. I just need to do something in my phone. That's why it can be interrupted for now. Just a moment. But you can come to my channel and after 5 minutes will be again. Because I'm in Melbourne till night, till sunset. You will see everything with me. guys, I'm back. Sorry for interrupting. Oops. Okay. Just a moment.
Because of my screen. Not too many people.
I know, I've disturbed everyone's photos. I know. Yes, you can sit on these if you want. Drunk people sit on them, so they're obviously sturdy enough. They can survive drunk people. Come around, take a step forward. Yeah. They make some weird noises, but they do work. So. Whoa. Yes, coming around, everyone, coming around. Okay. Yes, coming around that way if you can't hear me all the way over there. But, welcome everyone to AC/DC Lane, named after a small rock band you may have heard of. Yeah, AC/DC. Okay, let's be honest. The band members, they went to school in Perth, they went to school in Sydney. The only connection they have here to Melbourne is they performed the music video. It's a long way to the top, on the back of a ute, down the middle of Swanston Street. So apparently that one music video was enough for us to name an entire laneway after them. So in 2004, the Mayor of Melbourne, he stood exactly where I'm standing right now, and he said, "They say there is a highway to hell, but this is a laneway to heaven. Let us rock." It was very dramatic, and then bagpipers actually came out from around the corner playing "It's a Long Way to the Top" on bagpipes. So probably the biggest celebration we've ever had for naming a street before. But talking about that rock and roll theme, I want to talk about a venue that used to be behind me over here. This used to be the location of Cherry Bar, one of the most famous live music venues here in Melbourne. So what happened? This. Brand new apartment complexes. Brand new apartment complexes and underground rock and roll venues don't work so well together. Within a couple of months, Cherry Bar was receiving noise complaints. They hadn't received noise complaints in 13 years, but the city council law said they had to pay for their own soundproofing. They couldn't afford to rip open all their walls and put in new soundproofing. They were going to go bankrupt. But Melburnians will always fight for what they believe in. So, within 24 hours, $50,000 was donated to Cherry Bar to keep this venue alive. This big lightning bolt over here has all the names of all the different people that donated money. A lot of them are names of like little bands, small little independent bands that may have performed here. Like, for example, Drunk Mums. It's a great name for a band. Or some more famous people, like I can see like Bon Scott is up there from AC/DC, so, a couple of more famous names up there. But, unfortunately, Cherry Bar's no longer here. Despite the fact that they survived for many more years, they had to move. A bit of a dispute with the landlord on rent. Cherry Bar nowadays, though, is 5 minutes up the road in that direction on Little Collins Street. And I really like the new venue because, once again, it's a small, intimate rock and roll venue. For example, a couple of years ago, Lady Gaga came here to Melbourne. Right, she did a big sold-out arena spectacular. She went from her arena afterwards. She went all the way around, down to Cherry Bar, walked up to James Young, the owner of the venue, and said, "I'm here to perform." And James said, "No, you're not." He already had a local artist booked. He was supporting local talent. Lady Gaga was so impressed that someone said no to her that she stayed for the rest of the show and bought everyone drinks. So I love Cherry Bar. I think it's an awesome place. Live music literally every night of the week. There will be live music on tonight. It will probably be some small rock and roll band you've never heard of before, which is exactly how we like it. Okay, we're going to head around the corner, literally 10 steps over there for my very final story of the tour. Let's do it.
То есть уже последняя история будет. О, смотри, какое дерево там.
Once again, taking a step forward. Help me out. Come around. There we go. Yes, come around, everyone, come around. We finished just over here. Plenty of time to take photos in just a second, I promise. Okay, here we are, everyone. My very final story of the tour. In 1959, a Hollywood blockbuster came into Melbourne. It was called On the Beach. Now, the story of On the Beach is a nuclear apocalypse, everyone's dead, only place left is Melbourne. Yeah, sorry, we're the only ones that survived. Okay, the real book is actually set in Tasmania, but Americans don't know where Tasmania is, so we got the big movie. No, the real truth is that Melbourne had just had the 1956 Olympic Games. We were on the map, everyone knew about Melbourne, we got the big Hollywood movie. Now, there were some huge American celebrities that came here from the 50s, Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, and Ava Gardner, actually, the big celebrity of the show, was asked by a Sydney journalist, what do you think about Melbourne? And you know, she said, I think it's the perfect place to make a film about the end of the world. That hurts. Okay, the truth is, she never actually said that. 20 years later, that Sydney journalist came out with the truth. He made up the quote and he put it in the newspaper. He was so desperate to get an interview with Ava Gardner, and Ava kept knocking him back, saying no, that eventually he just gave up, went back to Sydney, and made up the quote and made Melbourne and Ava Gardner look bad in the same quote. The thing is though, we had never had a Hollywood blockbuster here in Melbourne. We were giving those celebrities everything they wanted. They loved it here in Melbourne. But do you know who absolutely hated it here in Melbourne? It was the film crew. Why? Because after a long, hard day of work, 7 p.m, they went to the local pub to get a drink, and every pub, club and bar in Melbourne was closed by 6 p.m. Melbourne has gone from being called the end of the world to literally the second most livable city in the world. And I think this laneway has a little bit of everything that I've talked about on the tour. Our live music venues like Cherry Bar making us one of the live music capitals of the world, and stories about how we always fight for what we believe in. Our amazing diversity of cuisine. I mean, we're literally next to a Peruvian, Danish, Indian, Chinese, and Italian restaurant, all in the exact same laneway, one after the other after the other. Our amazing urban development. I mean, people coming and moving here in the centre of the city. Our amazing street art by Finton McGee, Lush, Suck, Steen Jones, and the only remaining piece of Banksy artwork hidden somewhere in this laneway. But most of all, the most important thing is, I hope you're all completely and utterly lost. Yeah, does anyone know where they are? If you're using Google Maps, that's cheating, that's not fair, So I hope that you guys were able to experience, you know, just a little bit of that joy and excitement that I did, you know, 15 years ago when I first started exploring my city for the very first time. Now, I will be sticking around for a while, so if anyone has any questions, like where to go for a drink now, or where to go for dinner, please feel free to ask me. And I hope that you leave me with what you thought the tour was worth, perhaps with the cost of